Hey everyone, how's it going? Today we're going to be going over and showing you how to install the Demco diode wiring harness here on a 2022 Ford Escape. So a wiring harness is basically going to transfer the signals from the motorhome to our flat-toed vehicle so we can let other motorists out on the road know what signals we're going to be making. Now, this is not only a safety concern, it's also a legal requirement in every state, and it is a required part of your flat-toe setup. Some of the times your vehicles can actually block the lights on your motorhome, so you need a way to safely and effectively transfer those signals. Now, there's many different options that transfer the signals from the motorhome to the vehicle, but a diode wiring kit is really going to be your best one. Now, the reason the diode wiring harnesses are the best options is because they utilize the factory taillights. Therefore, you don't have to worry about any additional lighting on the vehicle, such as the magnetic lights that sit on the roof, and you have to drape the wiring down the hood of the vehicle, and it certainly doesn't look the best. So having those factory taillight circuits there is really going to make for the best overall appearance. Now, with the diodes, those are going to stop the backflow of electricity. Therefore, you don't ever have to worry about your motorhome affecting the lights on your vehicle or vice versa. Everything is going to be separated out from one another, so you're not going to have any lighting issues with your motorhome or vehicle. So the only downside of the diode wiring harness is that you do have to splice into a couple wires here on each side of the vehicle, but it is very minor. You're not going to affect anything on the vehicle by doing so, so don't let that stop you guys. This is truly the best kit here for this vehicle to transfer your signals from the motorhome. So this is a complete kit. Not only do we get all the wiring we need and the diode to connect to the taillights, we're also going to get our connection from the vehicle to the motorhome, the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord has a 7 to 6-way design, so 7-way on the motorhome, which is most common, and then 6-way on the vehicle, and it does give you this 6-way shown here. So this is a great coiled hose, therefore it's not going to drag on the ground. It's going to keep it nice and tight to the bottom of the tow bar. As we said, the 7-way is just going to simply plug into the motorhome. Pretty much every motorhome out there with the trailer hitch has a 7-way as well, so shouldn't need to worry about compatibility issues there. And then in regards to the 6-way, as we said, this comes with your kit here, so you'll just wire this up to the diode wiring that comes with your kit. Very easy. We will show you how to do that. And there's also an extra circuit in here that allows you to run a battery charge line from the motorhome, so you can charge your vehicle's battery. Now, that's actually a requirement for this vehicle, so it's going to be great to have that option. You don't have to worry about running a separate wire. Everything is going to be included here in the umbilical. So we did just touch a little bit on installation, but just speaking to that further, most of this installation process is just finding a path to route the wiring harness from the front to the rear. Everything else is pretty simple, and we'll actually walk you through this entire process now. The only tools you're really going to need are just some basic common hand tools, and then perhaps a pair of wire cutters and crimpers. A lot of those tools are 2-in-1. They're very cost effective, so only a couple bucks. Definitely something you're going to need, so I recommend picking that up. But aside from that, as we said, it's very straightforward. The system works very well. Let's go ahead and show you how to get it installed now. So keep in mind, we're going to be doing this installation without our bumper fascia off today because we just got done installing the base plate. So that's what I recommend doing for you guys as well. It's going to give you some more room to work. You can still do it with the bumper in place, but it's going to be a little bit harder to work around. So you're going to need to sort of figure out the first couple steps by yourself if you still have the bumper on. But if not, we'll go ahead and show you how to route it with the bumper off. So the first step of our installation, we're going to take our main wiring harness bundle that comes in your kit. You're going to cut off the 2 trailer connector ends. We're going to tie it off to a point on the front of the vehicle, and then we're going to route those wires all the way back to the rear where our taillights are. So we went ahead and got our wire routed. We can show you the exact path that we took, but you can see here I gave myself a couple inches or so of this wire to attach my trailer connector to. But for right now, we're just going to circle this around our base plate kit, and then we'll deal with the trailer connector a little bit later. So all we did now is I just took this wire and I routed it underneath this panel here, all the way over up into this area here, and then we'll go underneath and show you where that comes out. So your wire is going to pretty much come out in this area here. Now, if you want to make things a little bit easier on yourself, go ahead and grab a 7mm socket and remove these screws on the outside edge of this panel. That way you can pull it down. You have a little bit more room to work, but we basically just routed our wire atop this panel here. There's a couple wires that we zip tied it to just to keep it nice and secure. And then it's going to come up and over our panel. You can see it poking out here. So again, we took a 10mm socket and we removed a couple of these metal nuts here that secure this panel. That way we could just drop it down, and again, just run your wire straight over this panel. Still above the panel all the way over to here. And if we pull this down, we might get a small glimpse of that wire coming out here. and then we just zip tied it at some existing lines. We're going to go up and over the subframe. You want to be careful in this area here because we have our moving suspension components, the coil springs, we have the rear axle along with the trailing arm. So I just have it zip tied to some brake lines at the top of the frame to keep it secure. Then we're going to come up and over the back portion of the subframe all the way over to here where we have another zip tie, and this is where our wiring harness is going to end. We're going to go up top, take our taillights off, and then we can feed our wires back through. So now that we have our wiring ran to the rear here, we need to go ahead and open up the tailgate and pop off our tail lights. So in order to do that, we're going to need a flathead screwdriver, and if you look in here, you're going to see a little cover. So we need to go ahead and pry that off. Should just pop off like that, and that's going to reveal a torque screw, which we'll remove with a T15 torque or a T25 Torx bit. Now we will remove the taillight by pulling out and away from the vehicle. Now we can't remove any of the connectors here for the taillight, so we're just going to let it hang to the side here. So now that we have this taillight off, we'll just go ahead and pop the other one off in the same method. And then once we get that done, we're going to take some sort of pull wire, a plumb bob, whatever you have that we can sneak between the body paneling, the rear bumper here. So we're just going to take this and we're going to stick it down through there. And basically what I'm looking for is I'm looking for this wire or this line to go all the way out underneath the bumper there. That way I can tie my wiring here to that pull line, and then I can pull this back up into the taillight pocket where we're going to be making our connections. So here is where the airline tubing that we routed through there is going to come down. I just had to reach up there and pull it down a little bit. But once we have it down here, we're just going to take our wires here and we're just going to tape them to that piece of airline tubing. That way we'll go back up top and pull everything through. So once you have your wires up here, I went ahead and just zip tied it to the factory wires there. And what that's going to do is that's going to prevent your wires from ever falling back down underneath the vehicle. So now that I have the wires up here, I'm going to have each of these strands. I'm going to go ahead and separate these from one another. Now once we have that done, we need to take a look at the wires coming out of this grommet here going into our tail light. So there's two of them we're going to be using. We're going to be using the purple wire and the yellow wire shown here. So the purple wire is going to be for our stop and turn signals, and then the yellow wire is going to be for our tail light. So about midway, I'm going to cut each of these wires just like that. And then I'm going to remove some jacket on either side of those wires so we can attach one of our spade terminals. So now that we have all of those wires stripped here, we're going to take our purple spade terminals. We're going to go ahead and crimp one onto each of those four wires. Now sometimes those wires can kind of fray on you. You can see those individual strands. So at that point you would just go ahead and just twist them together. And the reason we're using the purple, not the blue spade terminals, is because the purple ones are a little bit smaller, so they grab onto these smaller wires better. So you can see we got our purple spades now in each of those four wires. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our brown and our yellow wires that come from the wiring that we ran from the front of the vehicle. We give ourselves a little bit of slack here. I'm going to go ahead and cut those off. Now on these two wires, we are going to remove some of the jacket, and we're going to be splicing on our blue spade terminals. So there is a small difference with this brown wire here. We actually need to make a jumper wire. So the remaining portion of this that you cut off, we're going to attach it here to this wire, just like so. And then we're going to crimp on one of our blue spade terminals. Now we can start making our connections. We're going to grab one of our diodes. The outside is going to go towards the bulb. So we're going to start with our purple wire here, which is for the stop and turn. Go ahead and plug that in. Our other purple side is going to go to the inside, just like so. And then this little terminal here is going to be for that yellow wire. This is the one coming from our harness up front of the vehicle. Now we're going to do that same thing there for the tail light one, so just go ahead and repeat those same few steps. So now that we've got our diodes attached here, what we need to do next is we need to take our brown and our green wires, and I'm going to feed this back down through that opening there because these are actually going to be ran over to the passenger side of the vehicle. And then the button things up here, we're going to have our white ground wire. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut off some excess to that. And then I'm going to strip some jacket back and crimp on the ring terminal that comes in your kit. So there's only one ring terminal. And then also in your kit, you're going to get a self-tapping screw. And we're going to use that self-tapping screw to secure the ring terminal to the inside of the body here on the metal surface. So now that we have all of our connections made, we'll go ahead and reinstall our taillight. Now I'm going to level with you guys, this is going to be kind of difficult because there's not a lot of room here in the taillight pocket, and we have these diodes which are adding some considerable thickness. So we're just going to sort of shove everything in there as best we can, making sure that we don't undo any of those spay terminal connections. So now we're underneath the vehicle here. You can see our brown and green wires that we fished down underneath. And now we're just going to route them over. You can see I left the zip ties attached so you can see what we're securing it to. And you want to be careful when you get around this area here because you have our tailpipe. So you're just going to go up and over like so. I'm going to leave it here for now. And then I'll use that other fish wire technique that we just showed you to get the wires up into the taillight pocket over on the passenger side. So we're over here on the passenger side now. You can see that we have our brown and green wires pulled up into the taillight pocket. Now as soon as you get them up here, I went ahead and zip tied them so they don't ever fall back down. And then we'll just make our connections. Same thing we did over on the driver's side for the exception of the taillight jumper wire. You don't have to do another jumper. That's just going to go to one of your spay terminals there. And again, the yellow wire is going to be for the taillight circuit. Therefore, we need to connect the brown wire to that. And then our purple wire is for the stop/turn signal circuit. Therefore, we need to connect our green wire to that. So now we're ready to install our trailer connector. First things first, I'm going to go ahead and separate each of these wires, and then I'm going to trim them back the appropriate amount. So there we go, now they have them all ready to connect. So our particular base plate kit actually has two little standoff tabs that we can mount this to. If your base plate kit doesn't provide some sort of way to mount the trailer connector, you're going to have to come up with that on your own because they really don't provide any brackets for this, but thankfully most of them will. This is a Roadmaster base plate kit, for example, but I'm pretty sure all the major brands are going to have a way to mount this. So we're just going to simply secure our trailer connector to the mounting bracket that comes with our base plate. And if you're wondering what this extra red wire is for, this is for a battery charge line circuit. You will need that for this vehicle, so it's a good thing to go ahead and obtain one. This is a Demco battery charge line circuit that we're installing. But we're going to take our boot here. We're going to place all of our wires through that end of the boot and just tuck it back up there like so. And now we're going to strip the jacket off each of these wires and begin attaching them to the terminals on the back of our trailer connector. Now we're going to take our small flathead screwdriver. I'm going to go ahead and find one of the terminals here. So this is GD, that's going to be for ground, that's going to be a white wire. So go ahead and loosen that screw, don't remove it completely. And you'll stick your white wire into that location. And you'll just simply tighten it down to lock it in place. Now that we have that one on, we're just going to repeat the same process for each of our remaining wires. They are all labeled. The RT is for right turn, that's going to be your green wire. The LT is for left turn, that's going to be your yellow wire. And then the TM is going to be for the running light circuit, that's your brown wire. So now that we have all of our wires attached, before we seal everything up and install it onto our little tabs here, I want to go ahead and plug it in just to make sure everything's working correctly. So I'm going to take the umbilical cord. It's a pretty tight connection, but I'm just going to go ahead and plug it in there. And then we're going to plug this other end. We're going to be using a test box here. If you guys don't have one of these, you could obviously just use your motorhome. Just keep in mind if there's any issues on the motorhome, they will affect your testing here on the vehicle. So now we'll go ahead and walk through our signals here. We have our tail lights, left turn, brake lights, and right turn. So now that we've verified everything is working correctly, we can go ahead and seal up our connections here with some RTV silicone. So this is just going to prevent any water getting in there and corroding the terminals. Once we get them all coated, we'll go ahead and slip our boot. Trying to be careful not to get too much of that silicone there in the seal. There we go. Now we'll go ahead and mount up the trailer connector to those tabs on our base plate. So now that we've tested everything and we know it's working properly, that's going to do it today for our look and installation of the Demco diode wiring harness here on our 2022 Ford Escape.